I'll continue speaking about it. I work for the Luxoft company, which is a big developer of software. I've been working for IT companies for 15 years now. I've been always in managerial positions. Over the last 5 years, I've been with Luxoft, assisting companies, including Luxoft, to transform their operations towards agile processes. Which of you have heard about agile? Great, a very optimistic approach. I hope my presentation will be useful to you as well as the other people. So I won't be speaking about what agile is about, but why agile? Why should your company need agile approaches? According to various studies, like Standish Group, Chaos Manifesto, their data testifies that a large part of functionalities, and we are speaking about software here, but you can actually apply it to any other industry. So many functionalities are not, or the larger part of functionalities are not used at all. So if you ask yourselves which part of your products is actually used by your customers. Here you can see that about half is never used, and we as Microsoft Word users actually use a very small fragment of all of the functionalities available there. So Agile can help us address some of the issues, major of them being increasing the number of products, the number of services and functionalities that would be used by the customers. Agile is not about higher, stronger, and farther, but rather about meeting most of your clients' needs. Agile is not a process whereby we design something for a long time, planning something for a long time, as it used to be back in the 1950s. The world itself was much slower, and we could be thinking for 5 years how to do something. Then it could take us 5 years to start doing something, and then hit the market, and then the market would say, yes, that's exactly what we need. Can I have a flip chart? I'll show to you how what it looks like in Agile and in non-Agile. In 2060s, the waterfall model appeared. You might be using this model applied to your products. You first identify a certain idea, then you start to design the product and think about its architecture and some details. Then you start planning the stages of product development. Only then will you start developing the product per se, and it can be an issue, particularly if it takes too much time. Perhaps here you agreed with a client, or we as a company agreed with our customers that we will have the product ready in a year. Now we have a long list of certain technical specifications, and there is the deadline, but the client and the market and the competition have to live over this year. Time is not frozen, so sometimes it can happen that while we were doing something for a year and we've developed a certain product which totally meets the specifications and the needs, but the client has changed expectations because life has changed over a year, company has changed over a year, and the market has changed over a year. This delta might be much smaller in aerospace industry, for example. You can afford developing a product for 10 years and then launch it into the market and then be quite happy. But in IT development, you cannot afford that. I don't know about your businesses, but nonetheless, I suspect something similar is going on. Just look at the stages of developing IT products. At first, first, we started with this waterfall. When we thought of one stage, then we completed it, and we started thinking about a different stage. Then, at some new phase, those stages started overlapping. When the waves overlapped, actually, we are trying to go ahead because the world is changing too fast. And in 2001, these people met at some ski resort to drink some whiskey, to ski, and think of how to improve IT product development or software development. Many of them were very successful in their businesses, but when they came together at the ski resort, they started thinking of what makes them successful. They were all practitioners, they all launched products into markets, but they started to thinking about their factors of success, and they compiled a document that is called Agile Manifesto. When somebody tells you that you are agile or non-agile, then you should look at the manifesto. Look at what you are not consistent with. It contains 4 values and 12 principles. It is available online in 12 languages, but this is the methodology. Actually, Agile is not quite a methodology. It is the adaptive philosophy or ideology, if you wish, and that's exactly what you should know about it. Otherwise, your company won't be agile. Agile is also about principles and values, but not only that. It's also about the mindset. I'll try to draw a brain. I hope it will look like that. But it is very difficult for us to understand whether the human brain is agile or not agile. But we can look at how a person or a team or a company behave. Are they consistent with the 4 values? Do they promote and live by those values? And do they adhere to the 12 principles that I gave you on another slide? Whether this mindset is manifested through the person's, company's, or team's behavior, and whether it is manifested in the practices. For example, retrospective practices or lessons learned, then planning and lessons learned. Have you heard about lessons learned ever? Okay, so there are lots of different practices, but practices without values and principles are cargo cults. The Americans had various interests in Pacific Islands. They built their bases there, and they provided the indigenous people with certain humanitarian aid. But then Americans transferred their bases elsewhere, and the indigenous people started building airplanes of grass and boughs, hoping that humanitarian aid will return. But it never happened. So it's about Agile. If you have no values but try to apply certain practices, you won't be agile. So please do pay attention to the manifesto. Oftentimes when I work with different companies of 80 employees, I understand that people never saw the document. They try to invent something which won't work. If you take all the spare parts out of a washing machine, and why should I be surprised that it does not operate and doesn't wash my linen? Scrum is about these practices that I drew there. If you're interested in what to do in order to be agile, you go to values and principles. If you want to know what to do, then turn to practices. There are a lot of various practices packed as frameworks. So Scrum is just this kind of a framework. Like in these rooms, there are walls which create the foundation for to have the ceiling on. So the frameworks give us certain carcass, I don't know, the ridge on which your values lean. So Scrum is a framework. Agile says that you in order to be healthy, you should eat healthy food and exercise, but Scrum will tell you what to do to eat healthy and exercise. So these are the frameworks that implement Scrum through certain practices. Both Scrum and Agile prevent us from getting in a dire situation whereby knowledge about the product and yourself is growing at the end of the project. When you're engaged in a certain project, everything seems to be good. It's like a joke when somebody jumps out of the window of the 13th floor and at the level of the 8th floor, and he still feels okay. At the level of the 5th floor, he still feels okay, but at the very end, nothing can be changed. With Agile, you do that step by step. You synchronize your effort all of the time with your client. It's an incremental, iterative approach. So if you look at those 4 values, 12 principles, we work with very brief iterations, no longer than 1 month, and we generate some part of the product and we give it to the customer seeking their feedback. And based on that feedback, what do? Nothing. We improve our product. We adjust to it. We inspect how it behaves in the market, whether it is liked by the users. If not, then what needs to be done to make it likable, etc. And we help our customer to change together with us, together with the product, by reducing the number of errors and by reducing the cost of the error. So it's one thing, but then you take a year to do something with a team of 50 people, and we would be doing something for a year, finding out that what we have done is not needed anymore. But when we do something within a month, we show it to the customer and we understand that it's the wrong direction that we are moving at, then we can adjust very quickly and timely. The cost of error goes down. Of course, we will launch the project into the product into the market. We can meet the customer's expectations. We keep adjusting to the time and process, and we control the process all the time. We inspect the project. We introduce changes even at the late stage of the development. And in Agile, you can do that when the customer says that something needs to be changed. So, Agile is not about planning, it's about adaptivity, and it helps us to use diversity of different people, ways of thinking, in order to invent something innovative. In Agile, you would not use Agile when you know what exactly what you have to have at the end. For example, when you bake pizzas, you know what pizza you know, then you won't use Agile. Agile will help you to be creative, to do something, to generate, to produce something that had never been before.
Agile has some disadvantages because we have to pay for our mistakes, but we learn from our mistakes. It's something that helps us adapt. And also, in Agile, the world is not defined. Hard as we may try to plan the future, nobody knows what the future holds. You never know 100%. You know what, when we plan over an annual cycle, then those plans start bearing down on us. But Agile actually, at the outset, appreciates that the world is not defined. Because there's a natural inclination to have everything planned and charted. But the world keeps moving on, and often we run into resistance from different sources, from management, from people you work with, but this is just, it's a natural apprehension to change. And you need to, Svetlana, I have 3 minutes left.
Есть также такой момент, что, допустим, возникает множество практик новых для людей.
New practices,
опять же, эти практики необходимы для того, чтобы использовать всех участников команды, использовать потенциал всех участников команды. Это и хорошо, и плохо, потому что нам же нужно, по сути, как бы менеджер процесс в рамках вот этого всего разнообразия, собирать людей на какие-то события, обсуждать что-то. И от этого возникает вот этот manage overhead of fast delivery. То есть надо что-то производить быстро, короткими стадиями, да, но при этом даже сбор обратной связи. Если вы собираете обратную связь раз в год, это одно дело, а если раз в неделю, вам нужно обработать результат, понять, что вы с ним получили. Правда? То есть не просто, что мы собираем обратную связь, мы хотим что-то понять с нее.
Collect feedback for feedback's sake. You need to process it. You need to decide on the optimum amount and frequency of feedback gathering. Maybe you don't really, if you're only capable of processing it twice a year, then why collect it more often? Now, one consequence of Agile is that we start producing more, but we lose quality. But that is just a side effect, because we start focusing on quantity, we may at some point lose quality, but then we go back and during the next iteration we bring the quality back up, and this is something that people really are concerned about. I've done lots of transformations both in this country and abroad. Like people expect simple orders. Tell us what to do, we're going to do it. But in Scrum and Agile, it's a free form. You have some tools. You're building a house, but it's you have to. Somebody brings a flip chart, or somebody brings people together to join a team. This is what we run into, this apprehension, because most people want to be explicitly told what to do. But there is no expert that this is just the product of much joint working discussions. But this is what actually underlies genuine teamwork. I'll be available to continue with you, and I'm a present on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I post a lot on Facebook. I used to deliver lots of webinars on facilitation on Agile, and this is my list of references for your bedtime reading on Scrum and Agile. This brings my presentation to a close. Thank you very much for your attention.